Hello, and thank you for being here. What we're about to discuss may be one of the most important conversations of your later years. Not because it's dramatic or scandalous, but because it concerns something too often left unspoken: your body's quiet need for intimacy, even as you grow older. My name is Dr. Lisa Pereira. For more than 3 decades, I've cared for women through the milestones of their lives: adolescence, motherhood, menopause, and beyond. Again and again, I've seen how the most overlooked aspect of health is not diet or exercise, but the intimate rhythms of a woman's own body. Let me begin with a story. A few months ago, I received a message from the daughter of a former patient. Her mother, Ella Lanina, had always been vibrant, warm, and sharp-witted. She loved her morning tea, her knitting by the window, and the way the sun lit up her favorite chair. One morning, her daughter found her there, tea still warm, yarn nestled in her lap, sunlight soft on her face. She looked peaceful, almost as if she had simply drifted into a dream. But she was gone. The official cause was natural. Nothing unusual, nothing unexpected. But when I thought back on Ella Lanina's declining health, the fatigue, the fading spark in her voice, the quiet erosion of her vitality, recognized something deeper. It wasn't just age that carried her away. It was years of slow neglect, particularly in the parts of her health most hidden and most ignored: her intimate, pelvic, and emotional well-being. And Ella Lena was not an exception. Every year, thousands of older women quietly unravel in similar ways, not because of catastrophic illness, but because they've been told, directly or indirectly, that a vital part of themselves no longer matters. They are led to believe that intimacy is for the young, that pleasure has an expiration date, that self-touch is frivolous or shameful. But here is a truth few dare to speak. When a woman abandons her intimate health, her body does not simply pause. It begins to change. Tissues weaken, hormones decline, muscles lose their strength. Even her sense of self may begin to slip away. I remember the first time I explained this to a patient. She stared at me, stunned, and whispered, "Why did no one ever tell me this?" That question has echoed in my mind for years. Why indeed? The silence is cultural, generational, and deeply human. For centuries, women's bodies, especially in the realm of intimacy, were treated as things to be managed in youth, hidden in middle age, and forgotten in later years. Medicine did little better, often dismissing these concerns as vanity or weakness, and so, countless women slipped quietly into decline, not because they lacked strength, but because they lacked knowledge. This video exists to break that silence. Over the course of our journey, I will share with you the science, the stories, and the strategies that can help preserve not only your physical health, but your emotional vitality. You'll hear about women like Ella Lanina, but also about those who found their way back, who discovered that even in their 70s and 80s, their bodies could awaken again. We will begin by exploring the consequences of neglect: the loss of tissue function, the weakening of the pelvic floor, the hormonal shifts that ripple through the brain. Then, we'll turn to little, practical steps any woman can take to reawaken her body's natural rhythms, no matter how many years have passed. This is not indulgence. This is not shame. This is medicine, in the truest sense. Care for the whole of you. So, before we take our first step into the details, I invite you to reflect. Has there been a part of your health you've quietly silenced? A part you've told yourself no longer deserves attention? Your body is still listening. And with knowledge, compassion, and courage, you can speak back to it again. This is where our journey begins, by breaking the silence. For centuries, women have been taught a lie. It is a lie so quiet, so persistent, that many carry it like a shadow without ever naming it. The belief that intimacy, pleasure, desire, self-touch has an expiration date. That once a woman reaches a certain age, she should close the door, dim the light, and accept silence where once there was life. I have seen this lie shape entire generations. A patient once told me, "I stopped touching myself after menopause. I thought it was childish. I thought it was wrong." Another confessed that she hid her vibrator in the back of a drawer after turning 60. Not because she didn't want to use it, but because she felt ashamed to be that kind of woman at her age. Where do these beliefs come from? Partly from culture. In many societies, a woman's worth has been tied to her youth, her fertility, and her service to others. Once those markers fade, she is often seen as invisible. The older woman becomes the caretaker, the grandmother, the wise one, but rarely the sensual being. Partly, too, from medicine itself. For decades, textbooks barely mentioned postmenopausal intimacy, except in terms of problems or disorders. The underlying message was clear. If you're older and struggling with intimacy, it's not a priority. It's just aging. Accept it. But here is the truth. There is no expiration date on intimacy. None. Your body remains alive, responsive, and capable of pleasure as long as you inhabit it. Science shows this clearly. Even in later decades, gentle stimulation of the pelvic tissues maintains circulation, preserves elasticity, and prevents atrophy. The release of oxytocin and dopamine during climax supports mood, reduces anxiety, even strengthens memory. And the pelvic floor, the silent foundation of your core, remains healthier, stronger, and more resilient when activated regularly. In other words, intimacy is not a luxury. It is a vital part of health. I recall a woman in her 70s who came to me after years of silence. She whispered that she felt hollow, as if her body were drying from the inside. When I explained that this was not just a feeling, but a biological reality, that her tissues were weakening because they had been left unstimulated, she cried. Not because of despair, but because of relief. For the first time, she understood that nothing was wrong with her spirit. What was missing was care. She began with the simplest step: self-touch once a week. Within months, her energy improved, her sleep deepened, and even her posture shifted. She laughed one day in my office and said, "I feel like my body woke up from a long nap." This is why we must challenge the myth of expiration. Because when women silence this part of themselves, they do not simply lose pleasure, they lose strength, they lose connection, they lose a dimension of life that belongs to them as much at 80 as it did at 18. And so I say to you, if anyone has ever told you that intimacy is behind you, I invite you to set that belief down. It was never yours to carry. The truth is this: as long as you breathe, your body remains capable of intimacy. And by honoring it, you not only reclaim joy, you protect your health. It is the first language you ever knew. Long before you spoke your first word, you were cradled, soothed, and shaped by the warmth of contact. Touch regulated your heartbeat, calmed your cries, and told you, you are safe. And though we often forget it, that truth does not expire with age. In fact, modern science reveals that touch, especially self-touch, remains one of the most powerful tools for maintaining health across the lifespan. When you touch yourself with intention, something remarkable happens inside your body. Blood vessels dilate, carrying oxygen and nutrients to tissues that would otherwise weaken. Nerves fire, keeping their sensitivity alive. Muscles, including the pelvic floor, contract and release, preserving tone and preventing prolapse. Hormones shift. Oxytocin rises, melting stress and deepening emotional resilience. Dopamine surges, sharpening motivation and memory. Serotonin soothes, bringing peace to restless nights. Even your immune system listens. Studies show that regular climax reduces inflammation and improves immune response, shielding the body from illness. This is why I say to every woman who hesitates, self-touch is not indulgence. It is medicine. I once had a patient, Miriam, who had gone nearly 15 years without intimate contact. She came to me, exhausted, plagued by insomnia, anxious without clear reason. "I feel like a ghost in my own skin," she said. I encouraged her to begin small. Not with the goal of pleasure at first, but simply with gentle, mindful touch. To lay her hand on her belly, to trace the outline of her hips, to breathe into her body, as though she were introducing herself again. Within weeks, she reported sleeping better. Her digestion improved. She laughed one afternoon and said, "Doctor, I didn't know touching myself could make me a better grandmother, but it has. I have more patience, more joy, more energy to give. That is the science of touch. When you awaken one part of your body, you awaken the whole." And yet, so many women abandon this medicine because of shame. They were told, often as girls, that self-touch was wrong. They were told, as women, that desire was selfish. And they are told, as elders, that it is irrelevant. But let me say this clearly: your body belongs to you, at every age. Your right to touch it, to nurture it, to delight in it, ever expires. The science is clear. The experience is transformative. The choice, now, is yours. Sometimes, it whispers through small signals you barely notice. Sometimes it cries out through pain, dryness, or discomfort. But whether you listen or not, the language is always there. And nowhere is this language more vital, more revealing, than in the intimate tissues of a woman's body. When intimacy is neglected, the changes arrive slowly, almost invisibly at first. A little dryness, a touch of irritation, a sense of heaviness low in the pelvis. You might dismiss it as normal aging, nothing to worry about. But beneath the surface, profound shifts are taking place. Without regular stimulation, blood flow to the pelvic tissues diminishes. Muscles that once held strong, supporting the bladder, the uterus, the bowels, begin to weaken. Collagen thins, elasticity fades, nerves grow less responsive. What was once supple and alive becomes fragile, vulnerable to tearing, infection, and even incontinence. I often tell my patients, neglect is not neutral. It does not simply mean less pleasure. It means the slow unraveling of a foundation your entire body depends on. One woman, Ruth, once confided that she hadn't touched herself in nearly 20 years. At first, she laughed as she told me. "What's the point?" she asked. But then her face softened. "Doctor," she whispered, "I feel like my body is disappearing." She was not imagining it. The medical term is urogenital atrophy, decline in tissue health directly tied to lack of stimulation and hormonal change. Left unchecked, it doesn't just affect intimacy. It affects walking, sitting, sleeping, even the simple act of laughing without leaking urine. But here is the hopeful part. The body remembers. Even after years of silence, the intimate tissues can respond again. With gentle, consistent attention, through touch, through exercises, through self-care rituals, the body begins to repair. Blood returns, nerves awaken, muscles strengthen. It is as though your body says, "Ah, you are listening to me again." The secret language of your body is not shameful. It is not indulgent. It is a call to care, a reminder that these tissues are alive and that they belong to you. And perhaps most importantly, when you answer that call, the benefits ripple outward. Women who reclaim their intimate health often report better sleep, steadier moods, sharper memory, even reduced pain in joints and muscles. The body does not separate one part from another. When you awaken one area, you bring vitality to the whole. So tonight, I ask you, what has your body been trying to tell you? Have you heard its whispers, or have you turned away? Remember, your body speaks a secret language. And by listening, you open the door not just to pleasure, but to strength, resilience, and renewal. Stories have a power that science alone cannot carry. Numbers tell us what is possible. Stories show us what is real. Over the years, I have witnessed countless women rediscover their vitality by reclaiming intimacy. Each story is different, yet they all share one thread: the moment of awakening. Let me share 3 with you. Alina, 68. After her husband passed, she believed her body's intimate life was over. For nearly a decade, she lived quietly, never questioning it. Then, one evening, she attended a women's health seminar where I spoke. Something stirred in her. She began with the simplest act, placing her hand over her heart each night before bed. Then slowly, week by week, exploring further. Months later, she came to me radiant. "I thought I was just surviving," she said, "but I realize now I'm alive again." Margaret, 74. She came to me embarrassed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Doctor, I leak when I laugh. I feel broken." We began pelvic floor training, combined with gentle self-stimulation, to restore circulation. Within 6 months, her incontinence improved dramatically. But what struck her most wasn't the medical progress. It was the laughter. "I can laugh with my grandchildren again without fear," she told me. I didn't know joy could come from this kind of healing. Aisha, 81. She had carried decades of silence, raised in a culture where even mentioning intimacy was taboo. Yet in her 80s, she dared to ask, "Is it too late for me?" I told her, "If you can still breathe, it is not too late." With small, tender steps, she began. For her, the awakening was not just physical, but spiritual. "For the first time in my life," she said, "I feel that my body is truly mine." These women did not chase youth. They did not chase beauty standards. They simply answered their body's quiet call. And in doing so, they found strength, joy, and dignity they thought was lost forever. Perhaps you recognize a part of yourself in their stories. Perhaps you, too, have wondered if it is too late, if the spark has gone out. If so, let these women be your companions. Let them remind you. Awakening is always possible, because your body is not finished. Your story is not finished. And the chapter of intimacy written with your own hands, in your own time, can still be one of the richest of all. When a woman stops speaking about her intimate health, when she tells no one of her dryness, her discomfort, her loneliness, that silence does not stay locked in her body. It spreads. It begins to shape her mood, her relationships, even her very sense of self. I have seen this in countless patients. At first, they come in for something simple: insomnia, low energy, vague aches. But as we talk, another truth emerges. They have not touched themselves in years. They feel disconnected from their own skin. Some even whisper, with shame in their eyes, "I feel invisible." The cost of silence is not only physical, it is emotional. Physically, the body declines faster. Tissues atrophy, infections increase, bladder control weakens, muscles that could have stayed strong collapse into frailty. And yet, because women rarely speak of these changes, they assume it is simply old age. They do not know that touch, stimulation, and care could have slowed or even reversed much of it. Emotionally, silence breeds isolation. A woman may stop laughing freely for fear of leakage. She may avoid gatherings because of discomfort when sitting. She may retreat from her partner, or worse, retreat from herself, believing she no longer deserves attention, pleasure, or tenderness. And socially, silence robs us of wisdom. Each time a woman hides her story, the next generation grows up without guidance. Daughters and granddaughters inherit not knowledge, but the same hush, the same shame, the same unanswered questions. This silence is not neutral. It is costly. I remember one woman, Clara, who told me, "I thought I was protecting my dignity by staying quiet." But after years of secrecy, she faced prolapse surgery, painful infections, and deep depression. She wept as she said, "If I had known earlier, if I had spoken sooner, so much suffering could have been spared." Her story is not unique, and it is why I speak now, without hesitation, to you. Breaking the silence is an act of survival. It is also an act of love for yourself, and for the women who will come after you. Because when we reclaim this conversation, we reclaim power. We show that intimacy is not shameful, not frivolous, not expired. It is health. It is strength. It is life. So I ask you, gently, where has silence lived in your life? And what would it mean to finally let your voice rise above it? For much of history, pleasure was treated as a luxury, something fleeting, something indulgent, even something sinful. Women especially were told that pleasure belonged to youth, to beauty, to fertility, but not to them as they aged. But the truth, as science and lived experience both reveal, is this: pleasure is medicine. When you allow yourself to experience pleasure, whether through self-touch, intimacy with a partner, or even simply through mindful awareness of your body, healing begins. Let's look at what happens inside you. Circulation improves. Each moment of arousal sends blood flowing back into tissues that hunger for oxygen and nutrients. The pelvic floor awakens. Muscles engage, supporting your bladder, bowels, and core strength. Hormones shift. Oxytocin floods your system, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, and softening loneliness. Dopamine sharpens your focus, lifts your energy, and fuels motivation. Endorphins soothe pain in joints and muscles. Sleep deepens. After climax, the nervous system relaxes, paving the way for restorative rest. This is not fantasy. This is biology. I once guided a woman named Helena, 72 years old, through this understanding. At first, she resisted. Pleasure, at my age? That feels selfish. But slowly, gently, she began to explore. A few minutes of self-touch, each week, turned into a ritual she looked forward to. Within 3 months, her blood pressure improved. Her anxiety faded. She laughed one afternoon and told me, "Doctor, I threw away my sleeping pills. My body finally remembers how to rest." That is the medicine of pleasure. And yet, so many women deny themselves this gift because they believe it is shameful. But I say to you, there is nothing shameful about using what your body was designed to give you. Your brain, your nerves, your tissues, every part of you was wired to respond to pleasure. To abandon that is not virtue. It is neglect. Pleasure, in truth, is not about indulgence. It is about balance. It is about restoring the delicate symphony of hormones, circulation, and muscle tone that keep your body strong. It is about giving yourself a reason to smile, a reason to feel alive in your skin, a reason to remember that you are more than a caretaker, more than a survivor. You are still, always, a being capable of joy. So tonight, I invite you to shift your perspective. See pleasure not as a forbidden fruit, but as a medicine cabinet that has always belonged to you. A medicine without cost, without prescription, without shame. Rediscover it, embrace it. Let it heal you. By now, you may be wondering, where do I begin? The idea of rediscovering intimacy, especially after years of silence, can feel overwhelming. But the truth is, you don't need grand gestures or sudden change. Renewal begins with the smallest, gentlest steps. Here are some practices I've shared with women in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, simple rituals that slowly awaken the body. 1. The breath touch. Place one hand on your belly and the other over your heart. Breathe deeply, allowing your hands to rise and fall. This reminds your body that it is safe to be touched, even by you. Stay here for a few minutes each day. 2. Warmth as invitation. Warmth is a healer. A soft bath, a warm compress, or simply resting under a blanket signals to your tissues. It is safe to open. Many women find that adding warmth before touch reduces discomfort and increases sensitivity. 3. The gentle exploration. Begin with outer touch. Hips, thighs, belly, without rushing to the intimate center. Imagine you are meeting your body again for the first time. Use oils if you like, not as indulgence, but as nourishment for skin and tissue. 4. Pelvic floor awakening. Practice gentle contractions, what many know as Kegel exercises. Breathe in, squeeze lightly, hold for a few seconds, then release. This strengthens muscles that support bladder control and intimacy alike. Done daily, it restores a foundation that time alone cannot protect. 5. Rhythm over intensity. The goal is not urgency, but rhythm. Even 10 minutes of mindful touch, once or twice a week, can bring remarkable change. Think of it not as a performance, but as watering a plant's small, consistent care that brings life back slowly. One of my patients, Rosa, began this practice at 76. At first, she admitted she felt silly, but she stayed with it. 3 months later, she said, "Doctor, I don't feel silly anymore. I feel alive. My body actually looks forward to our time together." That is renewal. Remember, there is no rush, no timeline. Your body is not demanding perfection. It is simply asking for presence, for gentle attention, for the kind of care you would give to anything you love. And as you practice, notice how the renewal extends beyond the intimate. Notice your posture softening, your sleep deepening, your laughter returning. These small practices are not just about intimacy, they are about reclaiming vitality in every part of your life. So tonight, when you lie down, perhaps place your hand on your belly, breathe, and listen. That is enough to begin. Not every woman chooses to walk this path alone. Some share their journey with a partner, husband, wife, companion, or longtime friend who has remained by their side. And here, intimacy takes on a new dimension. It becomes not only self-care but shared care. For many couples, aging introduces silence into the bedroom, not out of lack of love, but out of hesitation. Bodies change, confidence shifts, routines take over, and sometimes unspoken fears keep partners apart. He worries he might hurt her. She worries he might not understand. So they stop reaching, even though the desire for closeness remains. But here is what decades of medicine and human experience have shown me. Intimacy does not belong to youth. It belongs to connection. And connection, at any age, can be tender, playful, and profoundly healing. When partners learn to slow down, to listen, to touch, with intention rather than expectation, something beautiful happens. Pressure fades, and presence takes its place. A kiss on the forehead before sleep, a hand held during a walk, a warm embrace in the kitchen. These are not small things. They are the scaffolding of intimacy that supports deeper renewal. I remember a couple in their 70s, married for over 50 years. They came to me because they thought their intimacy was gone forever. After years of silence, they felt like strangers in their own bed. But instead of giving up, they chose to relearn each other. They began with simple rituals: eye contact at breakfast, hand massages at night, speaking aloud what they appreciated about one another. Weeks later, they moved on to gentle exploration, not rushing, not striving, just rediscovering. And one afternoon, she told me, her eyes shining, "It felt like our first time, all over again." This is the truth so many forget. Love does not expire. It evolves. And when two people choose to nurture it with patience, laughter, and care, they not only restore intimacy, they deepen it in ways youth could never imagine. For women who do not have partners, know this: your story is no less valid, your renewal no less important. But for those who do, remember that intimacy is not something you must protect your partner from. It is a gift you can share, a way of reminding each other, we are still here, we are still us. A partner's role is not to fix, to perform, or to prove. It is to witness, to support, to meet you where you are. And when that happens, intimacy becomes less about bodies and more about souls, finding one another again, even after decades of change. For centuries, women have carried silence like a second skin. Silence about desire, silence about pleasure, silence about their own bodies. In many cultures, intimacy beyond childbearing years is treated as unseemly, even shameful, as though vitality itself should wither after menopause. This silence has a cost. When society tells women that passion has an expiration date, many internalize the message. They stop speaking about discomfort, even to doctors. They accept dryness, pain, and disconnection as inevitable. They silence their questions, their needs, their longings. And in doing so, they begin to lose not only physical vitality, but pieces of their identity. I recall a patient named Miriam, raised in a deeply traditional household. At 72, she whispered her questions to me, as though they were confessions. She believed she was broken, sinful even, for still feeling desire. No one had ever told her it was natural. No one had ever told her it was healthy. When I reassured her, she wept not from grief, but from relief. For the first time in her life, she realized she was not wrong for being human. This cultural silence does not exist in every society. In some traditions, like those of certain indigenous groups, elders are revered as keepers of wisdom. And intimacy in later life is seen as a continuation of wholeness, not an ending. In others, older women speak openly about pleasure as part of health, not as something to be hidden. These examples remind us that shame is not universal, it is constructed. And what is constructed can also be undone. But undoing it requires courage. It requires women daring to speak aloud the truths their mothers and grandmothers never could. It requires challenging the narratives that aging means invisibility, that intimacy is childish, that pleasure is unnecessary. Because the truth is this: shame is not protective. It is corrosive. It eats away at self-worth, at relationships, at health itself. Every time a woman feels she must whisper her needs, instead of voicing them, shame wins. And every time a woman chooses to speak to her doctor, to her partner, to herself, shame loses. Perhaps the most radical act an older woman can make today is to claim her right to joy, to health, to intimacy, without apology. Not indulgence, not sin, simply humanity. And in breaking the silence, she does not just heal herself. She gives permission to others, her friends, her daughters, her granddaughters to live differently. To understand that intimacy is not shameful, not selfish, not bound by age. The cost of silence is too high, but the gift of voice, that is liberation. Behind every gentle touch, every moment of arousal, every quiet breath of intimacy, there is a symphony unfolding inside the brain. And understanding this symphony can transform the way you see your own body. When skin is stroked, whether by a partner, by the brush of fabric, or by your own hand, tiny nerve endings awaken. These nerves send signals up the spinal cord into the brain's sensory centers. From there, the brain responds with a cascade of chemical messengers designed not only to heighten sensation, but to nurture health. Oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, floods the bloodstream. This is the chemical of trust, of safety, of belonging. It eases anxiety, softens the heart, and strengthens emotional connections. Dopamine, the reward molecule, lights up the brain's pleasure circuits, motivating you to seek joy again. Serotonin, the stabilizer, balances mood, while endorphins create a sense of euphoria, dulling pain, both physical and emotional. Scientists have found that this cocktail of chemicals does more than provide temporary pleasure. It lowers blood pressure, improves immune function, and even supports memory. Some researchers now believe regular intimacy, self-guided or shared, can protect against cognitive decline by keeping neural pathways active and flexible. And here is something remarkable. The brain does not distinguish strongly between self-touch and partnered touch. What matters most is consistency, gentleness, and intention. This means you carry within you, at all times, a natural pharmacy capable of lifting mood, soothing loneliness, and supporting resilience. I remember speaking with Evelyn, a retired teacher in her late 60s. She confessed that she often felt flat, unmotivated, as though her days had blurred together. But when she began simple practices of mindful touch, nothing elaborate, just moments of attention, her mood began to shift. "I didn't expect it," she told me, "but I feel more awake. Even colors seem brighter." What Evelyn was describing was neurochemistry at work. Her brain, once deprived of stimulation, was being nourished again by the hormones of connection and vitality. Touch is not trivial. It is language. It tells the brain, "You are here, you are alive, you are worthy of care." Without it, the mind can slip into loneliness, even despair. With it, the brain remembers its own joy. This is why intimacy, at any age, matters. Not because of society's expectations, but because your brain and body are designed to thrive on connection. And you have the ability, right now, to awaken those pathways, to let the symphony play again. Aging changes not only the body, but the way many women see themselves. For decades, identity may have been tied to roles: mother, partner, professional, caregiver. When those roles shift or fall away, women often ask, "Who am I now?" Intimacy offers one of the quietest yet most powerful answers. In moments of closeness, with oneself or with a partner, woman reconnects with parts of her identity that society often tries to erase. She is not invisible. She is not past her prime. She is not defined solely by who she cares for. She is simply, undeniably, a living being capable of pleasure, tenderness, and self-discovery. One woman, Clara, once told me she felt as though intimacy reintroduced her to herself. After decades of raising children and caring for an ill husband, she had forgotten her own needs entirely. When she began exploring her body again tentatively, gently, she said, it felt like meeting an old friend. "I realized," she whispered, "that I'm still here. I didn't disappear. I just forgot." This is the profound gift of intimacy in later years. It restores a sense of selfhood. It allows women to reclaim their narrative, not as caretakers only, not as background figures in family stories, but as central, vivid characters in their own lives. And this rediscovery does not require grand gestures. It can be as simple as choosing silk sheets because they feel good against the skin, or as quiet as pausing to savor the warmth of a lover's hand. Each act whispers, "I matter, my body matters, my joy matters." When identity is rebuilt on these foundations of self-acceptance and self-celebration, aging is no longer an erasure. It is an unveiling. Layers of duty, expectation, and silence fall away, and what remains is something raw, beautiful, and true. Intimacy becomes a mirror, not of youth, but of presence. And in that reflection, women often discover a self more radiant, more confident, and more free than at any time before. Because identity is not fixed. It is renewed, again and again, with each choice to honor your own aliveness. There is a truth often overlooked in medicine. Pleasure is not frivolous, it is restorative. The body responds to it as it does to nourishment, to sunlight, to breath itself. When a woman allows herself moments of intimacy, whether through touch, movement, or the quiet pulse of arousal, her physiology shifts in measurable ways. Blood flow increases, delivering oxygen and nutrients to tissues. Muscles soften, releasing tension stored over years. The heart steadies into a calmer rhythm. Even the immune system awakens, strengthened by the flood of supportive hormones. Some researchers now speak of intimacy as a form of micromedicine. Unlike pills or procedures, it requires no prescription, only permission. And its effects ripple outward, improving sleep, easing pain, sharpening memory, lifting mood. But beyond biology, there is another kind of healing, the healing of wounds that cannot be seen. Many women carry scars of neglect, of criticism, of feeling unwanted in a world that worships youth. Pleasure challenges those scars. Each time a woman says yes to her own body, she rewrites the message that she is unworthy. She begins to replace shame with softness, fear with curiosity, silence with song. I once worked with a woman named Helena, who had endured years of illness and surgery. She told me she felt her body was broken, unlovable, beyond repair. But slowly, she began exploring gentle practices of self-pleasure, not as indulgence, but as therapy. One day, she said to me, through tears, "I thought I was ruined. But I realize, now I can still feel. And that means I'm still alive." This is what healing through pleasure looks like. It is not about denying age, or pretending the body has not changed. It is about celebrating what remains possible. About recognizing that sensation is not gone, only waiting to be invited again. Every smile released by touch, every sigh of relief after closeness, every spark of warmth in the chest, that is the body's way of saying, "Thank you for remembering me." And in those moments, the body does more than respond. It begins to heal. For some, intimacy is not only physical, not only emotionally, is spiritual. A meeting place where body and soul merge, where the ordinary act of touch becomes something sacred. Across cultures and centuries, many traditions have seen sexuality as more than desire. In Tantra, intimacy is a pathway to union with the divine. In ancient Taoist practices, pleasure was understood as a way of circulating life force, ki through the body, nurturing vitality and balance. Even in quieter traditions, elders often speak of closeness in later years as a kind of prayer, not about performance, but about presence. When a woman allows herself to experience intimacy at this stage of life, it can feel less like chasing passion and more like resting in connection. The body becomes a temple, not despite its age, but because of it. Each wrinkle, each scar, each softened curve tells a story. And when touched with reverence, those stories become part of the ritual. One woman once told me, "When I am close to my partner now, it feels like meditation. We are not trying to get anywhere. We are just being. And in that being, I feel God." This is the essence of the spiritual dimension. Intimacy as a doorway to presence, to surrendering control, to remembering that life, in its deepest sense, is not about what we produce or achieve, but about what we feel, what we give, what we receive. And for those who walk alone, this spiritual intimacy is no less real. A quiet moment of self-touch, carried out with love and patience, can become a form of devotioning, way of saying, "I honor this body, this spirit, this life that carries me still." To approach intimacy as sacred is not to deny its pleasure, but to deepen it. Pleasure becomes prayer, connection becomes communion, and aging becomes not an ending, but a passage into a more profound kind of wholeness. Because in the end, intimacy is not only about bodies joining, but about souls remembering, we are alive, we are worthy, we are eternal. And so we arrive at the heart of this journey. For too long, women have been told that intimacy fades with age, that desire has an expiration date, that pleasure is a luxury reserved for youth. But the truth, whispered through science, through story, through lived experience, is something far more powerful. Intimacy does not end, it transforms. In this transformation, women discover new freedoms. Freedoms from the pressures of performance, from the weight of comparison, from the silence that once bound them. What remains is intimacy in its purest form, slower, deeper, more tender, more authentic. It is the embrace of self after years of neglect. It is the laughter of two partners rediscovering each other in their 70s. It is the quiet, radiant joy of a woman who rediscovers her body after decades of silence and realizes she is still whole. This is not a decline. It is a reclamation. To reclaim intimacy is to reclaim life itself, to say, "I am still here. I am still worthy of touch, of joy, of connection, of love." And perhaps the most profound truth of all is this. Intimacy at this stage is not about holding on to the past. It is about creating a new dawn, one that glows with acceptance, with freedom, with presence. For the woman listening to these words, whether you are 60, 70, 80, or beyond, remember, your story is not finished, your body is not finished, your joy is not finished. The dawn is always waiting. All you need to do is open the window, let the light in, and begin again. Intimacy at this stage of life is a revelation. It's like finding a hidden treasure that was there all along, waiting to be discovered. Women are stepping into a new phase of life where they re-shedding the layers of societal expectations and discovering a deeper, more authentic connection with themselves and their partners. You see, intimacy is not just about physical connection. It's a profound exploration of the self, a journey inward that leads to a richer, more fulfilling life. And it's this journey that many women are embarking on, embracing the wisdom and confidence that comes with age, while also nurturing a vibrant sex life. It's no surprise that the path to self-discovery and sexual liberation is often fraught with challenges. Many women have been conditioned to believe that their worth is tied to their sexuality, that their value as individuals is somehow diminished with age. But what if we challenge this narrative? What if we rewrite the story and redefine intimacy on our own terms. This is the essence of female sexual liberation. It's about breaking free from the shackles of societal norms and expectations and embracing a sexuality that is authentic, fulfilling, and joyful. The journey begins with self-acceptance, with acknowledging and embracing all aspects of ourselves, including our changing bodies, our evolving desires, and our unique experiences. As women age, their bodies go through significant changes, both physically and hormonally. These changes can sometimes be seen as a loss or a decline, but what if we shift our perspective? What if we view these changes as an opportunity for growth, as a chance to connect with our bodies in a deeper way? This is the first step towards reclaiming our sexuality, towards embracing the power and beauty of our changing bodies. Intimacy at this stage is a profound connection, not only with oneself, but also with a partner. It's a connection that is built on mutual respect, trust, and vulnerability. It's a partnership where both individuals feel safe to express their needs and desires without fear of judgment or shame. Imagine sitting in a quiet, peaceful place with your partner, completely comfortable and at ease. There's a deep sense of connection between you, a bond that has only grown stronger with time. This is the power of intimacy, the ability to be truly present and connected with another human being. It's a feeling of profound peace and contentment, a reminder that you are not alone in this world. However, the path to intimacy is not always easy. Many women have been socialized to believe that they must put their partner's needs before their own, that their own desires and pleasures are somehow less important. But what if we challenge this belief? What if we embrace our own desires and needs as valid and important, not selfish or indulgent? This is a crucial step towards creating healthy, fulfilling relationships. It's about recognizing that in order to truly connect with and love another person, we must first love and accept ourselves. As women age, they often bring with them a wealth of life experience, wisdom, and confidence. These qualities are not only admirable, they are also essential to creating meaningful connections. Older women are more likely to have navigated the complexities of relationships, to have learned from their past experiences, and to have developed a deep sense of self-awareness. They understand their own needs and desires, and are more willing to communicate them openly and honestly. This is an invaluable asset in any relationship. The ability to communicate openly and honestly about one's needs and desires is fundamental to creating a deep sense of intimacy. It's a skill that can be honed and cultivated, and it's one that can lead to more fulfilling and satisfying relationships. But it's not just about what we bring to the table. Older women also have a unique perspective on life, one that is shaped by their experiences, their wisdom, and their resilience. This perspective can be incredibly valuable in relationships, offering a different way of looking at things and a deeper understanding of life's complexities. When two people come together with this kind of depth and maturity, something special happens. The connection between them deepens, the communication becomes more meaningful, and the love they share becomes more profound. It's a connection that is built on a foundation of shared experiences, mutual respect, and a deep sense of empathy. And yet, despite the many benefits of aging, there's still a prevalent cultural narrative that suggests otherwise. We often hear phrases like, sex after 60, implying that it's something unusual or even shocking. But why is this the case? Why do we continue to live in a society that values youth and beauty over wisdom and experience? The answer, unfortunately, lies in the deeply ingrained societal norms and expectations that have been placed upon women throughout history. For centuries, women have been objectified and sexualized. Their worth often measured by their appearance, and their sexual desirability. This has led to a culture that values youth and beauty. A culture that perpetuates the harmful myth that women's value declines with age. But what if we challenge this narrative? What if we rewrite the story and redefine beauty on our own terms? This is the essence of female sexual liberation, breaking free from the confines of societal norms and expectations, and embracing a sexuality that is authentic, fulfilling, and joyful. Imagine a world where older women are celebrated for their wisdom, their experience, and their unique perspectives. A world where they are valued not just for their physical appearance, but for the richness of their character and the depth of their being. This is the world we need to create, a world where every woman feels empowered to embrace her sexuality, regardless of her age. But how do we achieve this? How do we break down the barriers that have been erected against older women and their sexuality? The answer lies in education, awareness, and a collective shift in mindset. We need to challenge the harmful stereotypes and misconceptions that have been perpetuated for far too long. We need to listen to the stories of older women, to learn from their experiences, and to celebrate their triumphs. By doing so, we can create a more inclusive and accepting society. One that values the diversity of female sexuality and the unique experiences of women of all ages. In the end, this journey is not just about physical intimacy or sexual liberation. It's about embracing the fullness of life, the beauty of aging, and the power of the feminine spirit. It's about recognizing that every stage of life has its own unique gifts and challenges, and that each stage is a valuable part of the journey. So let us continue to explore, to learn, and to grow. Let us embrace the wisdom of our elders and the energy of our youth. Let us honor the divine feminine in all its forms and celebrate the beauty of female sexuality at every age.